But my job right now is to give you some poems. And I'm glad to do that because the best part of me is in the poems. That's been my passion my whole life. And I'm happiest when I'm giving them. So I think I'll begin with a poem called The Russian. These poems come from a tradition, a discipline of writing poems every morning when you wake up, not getting out of bed until your poem is done. And as some of you know, I've done that out of loyalty and love of Bill Stafford, who had done it for 30 years. And I loved him a lot, and I still love him. So I do this every morning. You begin with anything and you don't know where it's going to go. Bill used to say, his father was part Native American, and he said, my father could hear a little animal step or a moth on a screen. And he called the rest of us out to some place we'd never been. Like in the middle of the poem, he listened as his father could listen. And then the end of the poem, his mother would come in, and he said, my mother had opinions like bent hatpins. She'd say things like this little town in Kansas, and it isn't what it used to be, and it never was. And so he'd begin wandering through the poem, and then it would often end with something like his mother's typical mother line. So when you do that, you're wandering through your mother and your father, you're wandering through your whole life. He used to say, by the time you're 17, you have plenty of material to write poems for the rest of your life, so don't worry about it. So I could do a lot of his poems. But maybe I'll do one tomorrow morning. But in this poem that I'm going to read you, I was up in Canada doing something in Toronto with Marion Woodman. We went to a party, and a young Canadian was there, maybe 30 years old. And he told this story at the party. He was Russian. His father was Russian. And so the next morning, I simply wrote down this poem, which I'll read to you. He said, the Russians had few doctors on the front line. My father's job was this. After the battle was over, he'd walk among the men hit, sit down, and ask, would you like to die on your own in a few hours, or should I finish it? Most said, don't leave me. The two would have a cigarette. He'd take out his small notebook. We had no dog tags, you know. That was interesting. The Russians had no dog tags. He'd take out his small notebook. We had no dog tags, you know, and write the man's name down, his wife's, his children, his address, and what he wanted to say. And when the cigarette was done, the soldier would turn his head to the side. My father finished off 400 men that way during the war. He never went crazy. They were his people. I thought it was so beautiful when he said that. It was like a flash went through me. He never went crazy. They were his people. He came to Toronto. And my father in the summers would stand on the lawn with the hose watering the grass that way. It took a long time. He'd talk to the moon, to the wind. I can hear you growing, he'd say to the grass. He'd say, we come and go. We're no different from each other. We're all part of something. We have a home. When I was 13, I said, Dad, do you know they've invented sprinklers now? He went on watering the grass. He said, this is my life. Just shut up if you don't understand it. So you have to say that to adolescents too. You know, nowadays people to adolescents say, you know, they invented a sprinkler. Oh, gee, is that really right? Whoa, I hadn't heard about that. You know, you take me down to the Kmart, you know. Gee, that wastes time and money. Just say, shut up, will you? Just shut up if you don't understand it.
How about the 3-year-old? Is the 3-year-old inside of you?
You want that one?
Yeah.
I don't usually do that. I'd be glad to do that.
Bad information.
Is that what it's called? All right. And one source of bad information? There's a boy in you about 3 years old who hasn't learned a thing for 30,000 years. Sometimes it's a girl. This child had to make up its mind how to save you from death. He said things like, stay home, avoid elevators, eat only elk. You live with this child, but you don't know it. You're in the office, yes, but you live with this boy at night. He's uninformed, but he does want to save your life, and he has. Because of this boy, you survived a lot. He's got 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you. So, and that comes out of Georg Gradek, who is one of the greatest analysts that's ever lived. And he was a little older than Freud, and it was he who invented the idea of the unconscious. But he wouldn't call it the unconscious, he called it the it. It. And it's much better. Because he said, you think you love this girl? It loves her. I mean, you say, you know, the unconscious loves her. What the fuck fun is that? And he was the best healer in Europe because he said that it uses you as a painting canvas. And when you get sick, it's simply a little design he's making on the canvas. Yeah. He says, what happens? He's trying to explain something to you through the symptom, whoever it is, and so on. But what do? You go to a doctor, and they take away the symptom. That's like going to an art teacher who erases a whole canvas. Brilliant, brilliant. And then what does it do? It says, shit, now I got to do a completely different painting. So I think I'll attack your stomach this time. So what does he do? He goes to a stomach specialist. This goes on for years. And so I was thinking about this little guy, and he said, this little it is very powerful, and he's about 5 years old. He's about 5. So, and I started thinking about that, and I'll just tell you this little story because it might help make it clear. My little guy often says things like, it's better to do this than to do that. It's better to stay home and get sick than to go out and die. That is one of his main sentences to me. How did I know that? I'm about to go out and I get a sore throat and sick. As soon as I'm out, sore throat disappears completely. So I got sick of doing this. This happened all the time. So finally one night I was about to go out and I said, wait a minute. Let's think about this thing. What is the sentence? And I formulated the sentence. It's better to go out and get sick. It's better to stay home and get sick than to go out and die. He's thinking about me, isn't he? He's afraid I'm going to die. So I had to turn to him then, and I had to say to him, listen, you remember the time we went to Los Angeles and we didn't die? Remember that time? Then we went to Vermont and we didn't die? This guy's got a poor memory. I refreshed him about 5 of these times when we didn't die. And I'm telling you, within 10 seconds, the whole sore throat was gone just like that. So that's why eventually I wrote this poem. It convinced me that there's something real in there. And this is not Faithful John. This is like Stupid John. But I like the way he likes me. Because, he's always ready to say things like it's better, maybe it's better not to make love to her now. Maybe it's better, it'd be better to make love to her than go and die somewhere else. All of his sentences are like that. There's a boy in you about 3 years old who hasn't learned a thing for 30,000 years. Sometimes it's a girl. This child had to make up its mind how to save you from death. See, its early work was done by the time you're 5 years old. He said things like, stay home, avoid elevators, eat only elk. You live with this child, but you don't know it. You're in the office, yes, but you live with this boy at night. He's uninformed, but he does want to save your life, and he has. Because of this boy, you survived a lot. He's got 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you. All right, so.
Do the dogs
one. The dogs one? All right. I did. This is called the resemblance between your life and a dog. And when you get to be my age, you discover that you've got this thing. It's called your life. And you don't recognize it, but other people think it's your life. You understand what I'm saying? I know about you. You did this and you did this and you did this. You're interested in the wild man, shit like that. It goes on and on and on. So this is a poem about that. The resemblance between your life and a dog. I never intended to have this life, believe me. It just happened. You know how dogs turn up at a farm and they wag but can't explain. It's good if you can accept your life. You'll notice your face has become deranged trying to adjust to it. Your face thought your life would look like your bedroom mirror when you were 10. That was a clear river touched by mountain wind. Even your parents can't believe how much you've changed. Sparrows in winter, if you've ever held one, all feathers burst out of your hand with a fiery glee. You see them later in hedges. Teachers praise you, but you can't quite get back to the winter sparrow. Your life is a dog. He's been hungry for miles, doesn't particularly like you, but gives up and comes in. So I do it again or leave it alone? So we're talking about the difference between your life at 10, and then what happened to it later? I never intended to have this life, believe me. It just happened. You know how dogs turn up at a farm and they wag, but can't explain. It's good if you can accept your life. You'll notice your face has become deranged, just trying to adjust to it. Just look at mine. Your face thought your life would look like your bedroom mirror when you were 10. That was a clear river touched by a mountain wind. Now even your parents can't believe how much you've changed. Sparrows in winter, if you've ever held one, all feathers burst out of your hand with a fiery glee. You'll see them later in hedges. Teachers praise you, but you can't quite get back to the winter sparrow. Your life is a dog. He's been hungry for miles, doesn't particularly like you, but gives up and comes in. All right, I'll just read a couple of them, unless anybody has things that you really want to do. Some men find it hard to finish sentences. This is one I did out of doing the men's work. You know, men have a very narrow connection between the two brains. It's called the Corpus Callosum. You got the words in one brain, and you got image, and you got feelings in another one. And women have this superhighway between the two brains. That's why they talk all the time. As Michael Meade said, men have a little country road. So I wrote this little poem. Sometimes a man can't say what he... A wind comes and his doors don't rattle. Hair comes and his hair is dry. There's a lot to keep inside and a lot to... Sometimes shame means we... Children are cruel. He's 6 and his hands... Even Hamlet kept passing the king praying, and the king said, there was something. So that's my joke. And you'll notice that this poem is related to the title of Terry's book. I don't want to talk about it. And John Lee told me a wonderful story. I said I'd talked to Terry Real on the phone, and I'd read his book and so on. And John said, wow, that's incredible. And one time he said, I was on the Oprah Winfrey show, and there was a break. And so I'd been talking about expressing feelings, and men should learn how to do that, and so on. And there was a break, and in the break, I was sitting at one of those lower ledges, and there was a black woman and a black man about 35 sitting in front of me. And the black woman hit the black man in the ribs and said, well, how about it? How about your feelings? He says, I don't want to talk about it. All right, I'll just do a few here. See what you want to do. The 3-day October rain blows down. The 3-day October rain blows leaves down. We knew that life wouldn't last long. The dock gleams with oak leaves, cold leaves in the boat, leaves spotted in the old man grass. Hardy warned us, Jesus in his boat, standing, his back turned, being rowed to the other shore. That's a little poem without any antennas in it, huh? It just stays in there. And I mentioned Thomas Hardy because he used to write this kind of thing. The 3-day October, this was written up in Moose Lake here, 5 miles away. The 3-day October rain blows leaves down. We knew that life wouldn't last long. The dock gleams with oak leaves. Cold leaves in the boat. Leaves spotted in the old man grass. Hardy warned us. Jesus in his boat, standing, his back turned, being rowed to the other shore. No. And here's one I wrote, Winter Afternoon by the Lake. I wrote it at Moose Lake a couple of years ago in the winter. Came up here sometimes in the wintertime, just be there, I'm all alone by myself. It's wonderful. Black trunks, black branches, and white snow. No one nearby. 5 o'clock. Below zero. Late January. No birds. No wind. You look, and your life seems stopped. Perhaps you died suddenly earlier today. But the thin moon says no. The trees say, it's been this way before, often. It's cold, but it's quiet. We've experienced this before among the messy Saxons putting back the hide flap. A voice says, it's old. You'll never see this again the way it is now. Because just today you sensed that someone gave you life and said, "Stay as long as you like." The snow and the black trees pause to see if we're ready to re-enter that stillness. Not yet. So the poem ends with this phrase, "Not yet." So I'll give you 2 poems about getting older. And I was reading that wonderful book by Nolan called, what's Nolan's book?
When he went to the store for bread.
Oh, no, that's another Nolan. This is a doctor who wrote this book about dying. And it's called The Neurons of Watchbirds. We have to think now what it would be like to be old. Some funny little neurons developed for high-speed runners and quick-handed bowmen begin to get tired. They fire, but then lay down their bows and watch birds. The kidney cells, too much thinking, the Chinese say. Look around for help, but the kids have all gone to the city. Your friends get hit by lightning, and your enemies live on. This isn't going to get better. Crows yelling from the telephone wires don't include you in the stories they tell. And they seem to remember some story that you haven't heard. What can you do? What can you do? We'll have to round up all those little people wandering around in the body, get them to sit up straight and study this problem. How do we die? I'll read a little bit. We have to think now what it would be like to be old. Some funny little neurons develop for high-speed runners, and quick-handed bowmen begin to get tired. They fire, but then they lay down their bows and watch birds. The kidney cells, I went to an acupuncturist, and she said, "Oh, your kidney's getting a little weak." "Why is that?" "Oh, too much thinking. You got to write shorter books." All right. So I'll do something that happens to someone my age and a little younger. It's going to happen soon to Robert Moore, and that is that someone says that you have to keep working all the time. So you got to listen to this voice inside you and decide is it Faithful John or who is it? Who's saying this? Things to think. Think in ways you've never thought before. If the phone rings, think of it as carrying a message larger than anything you've ever heard, vaster than 100 lines of Yeats. Think that someone may bring a bear to your door, may be wounded and deranged. Or think that a moose has risen out of the lake, and he's carrying on his antlers a child of your own, whom you've never seen. When someone knocks on the door, think that he's about to give you something large, tell you you're forgiven, or that it's not necessary to work all the time, or that it's been decided that if you lie down, no one will die. I think I'm having to talk here against the little 5-year-old, don't you think so? I think he was the one that said, "You know, my father was alcoholic, etc. You got to work. If you stop working, someone in the family's going to die." That's the message I had. When someone knocks at the door, think that he's about to give you something large. Tell you you're forgiven. Or that it's not necessary to work all the time. And that it's been decided that if you lie down, no one will die. So that's been my job in the last couple of years, to lie down. And I use this wonderful word, no. Will you come and give us a talk? No. Will you come and give us a poetry reading? How much? All right, about 3 more poems feel okay for you? Is it hard to listen? Are you tired? We're going back to the situation of lying in bed in the morning and writing a poem. And this is connected a little bit with that portrait on the wall we had this morning. It's as if someone else is with me here in this room in which I lie. The longing that the ear feels for sound has given me the sweetness that I confuse with her. The joy of being alone, eating the honey of words. The white-walled room and Wallace Stevens and the sun. This is the joy of the soul that has preserved itself despite fleas and soap in the light-hearted sun. Give me that stanza over again. The joy of being alone, eating the honey of words. The white-walled room and Stevens and the sun. This is the joy of the soul that has preserved itself despite fleas and soap in the light-hearted sun. One is not alone when one is alone, if she is here. It's a she that no one loves, a she that one loves when one loves what one does love. Give you the last stanza again. Friends wrote to me and says, Robert, do you realize you got 10 one-syllable words in the last line? One is not alone when one is alone if she is here. It's a she that no one loves, a she that one loves when one loves what one does love. That's what he was saying, to live by what you love. I've been thinking about these little adventures in morning longing, these embarkations, these excursions on round hide boats on the sea, passing over the beings far below. Is the image clear? I've been thinking about these little adventures in morning longing, these embarkations, these excursions in round hide boats on the sea. You know, a hide boat was round and you couldn't get any direction to it at all. That's why the Irish are like they are. These embarkations, these excursions in round hide boats on the sea, passing over the beings far below. The deep vowels, maybe whales, mourn and sing at their stone table 5 miles down on the ocean floor. They mourn some loss. But the small finny sounds, the ers and the ins and the ors and the ings, mourn as well. We don't know what. Perhaps vowels were all created in a moment of sorrow before creation, a grief they've not been able to sing in this life. So, the big vowels, what are the big vowels? Oh. The deep vowels, perhaps whales, mourn and sing at their stone table 5 miles down on the ocean floor. They mourn some loss. But the small finny sounds, the ers and ins and ors and ings mourn as well. We don't know what. Perhaps vowels were all created in some moment of sorrow before creation. A grief they've not been able to sing in this life. So when you write poems, you're expressing your feelings and you're expressing the feelings of your families, but you're also expressing the grief that so many beings in the universe want to sing, and they can't do it. Is that clear? That's one thing you're doing. That's why it's a blessed thing to allow sounds to come through you and to write in that way. You're mourning for many more people besides yourself, and many more beings. So I'll do one more of these. It's good to stay in bed a while and hear the A slyly hidden in sequacious, and sent in summer world the two ers. You know, English is very confusing because we spell these sounds differently. Summer world, it's the same sound. It's good to stay in bed a while and hear the A slyly hidden in sequacious, and sent in summer world the two ers. Listen, I especially love the in hidden in wood bins. Am I like the hog snuffling for truffles, followed by skimpy lords in oversized furs? For this gaiety, do I need forgiveness? Does the lark need forgiveness for its blue eggs? So it's a bird-like thing then, this hiding and warming of sounds. These are the little low heavens in the nest. Now my chest feathers widen. Now I'm an old hen. Now I am satisfied. So I'll give you that once more. And this is a good example of the kind of poem Bill's talking about. One of the things is, when you start a poem like this, you follow it wherever it goes. You don't stop at any point and make a judgment. You let anything in. That's a real training, because usually poetry is connected with your teacher telling you, that was stupid. And so you have to let all that go. And so when I said, for this gaiety, do I need forgiveness? And then suddenly I said, does the lark need forgiveness for its blue eggs? So I had to let the lark in. Well, it turned out I needed him, because the next line says, so it's a bird-like thing then. That's how the whole thing got resolved. Is that clear? But I had no idea at all. It's good to stay in bed a while and hear the A slyly hidden in sequacious, and to scent in summer world the two ers. Listen for the in hidden in wood bins. Am I like the hog snuffling for truffles, followed by skimpy lords in oversized furs? For this gaiety, do I need forgiveness? Does the lark need forgiveness for its blue eggs? So it's a bird-like thing then, this hiding and warming of sounds. They are the little low heavens in the nest. Now my chest feathers widen. Now I am an old hen. Now I am satisfied. All right. I think I'll do one more poem. Anyone have one that they want to hear? Okay. Suppose you see a face in a Toyota one day, and you fall in love with that face, and it's her. And the world rushes by like dust blown down a Montana street. And you fall upward into some deep hole, And you can't tell God from a grain of sand. And your life is changed, except that now you overlook even more than you did before. And these ignored things come to bury you. And you are crushed, and your parents can't help anymore. And the woman in the Toyota becomes a part of the world that you don't see. And now the grain of sand becomes sand again, and you stand on some mountain road weeping. Suppose you see a face in a Toyota one day, and you fall in love with that face, and it's her. Are we back to that picture on the wall? And it's her. And the world rushes by like dust blown down a Montana street. And you can't tell, and you fall upward into some deep hole. Isn't that what it feels like? And you fall upward into some deep hole, and you can't tell God from a grain of sand. And your life has changed, except that now you overlook even more than you did before. And these ignored things come to bury you. And you are crushed. And your parents can't help anymore. And the woman in the Toyota becomes a part of the world that you don't see. And now the grain of sand becomes sand again. And you stand on some mountain road weeping. So let's call that. And thank you for listening and looking at me with those sweet eyes. Thank you.